Hi, my name is Caitlin Amuso, and this will be my media report on Modules 7 through 11. So, in Module 7, it was all about rethinking masculinity, disability, and feminist filmmaking. The movie that we watched, The Rider, was about a man named Brady who was in a rodeo accident, leaving him unable to ride or compete in rodeos. He needed to learn how to accept his disability and regain his identity. In this module, we were able to examine the word disability and how it is portrayed in media, and explore the idea of the female gaze and how it's a unique perspective critical to filmmaking. Benshoff and Griffin discussed the social model of disability, where people understand the idea of disability but tend to focus on their limitations and what they can no longer do. This is evident in the movie when Brady's dad and friends tells him that he needs to stop riding and accept what he cannot do. Additionally, the interview from Another Gaze discussed how the movie breaks the stereotype of masculinity and identity. From a female producer's perspective, the film was created in a way that showed Brady's vulnerable side, not just the manly cowboy that he once was. We saw a scene of him crying in his car, which isn't common to see from male leads. Module 8 discusses Orientalism, otherness, and Asian American representation. The movie, The Namesake, was about two people who moved from Calcutta to New York and began a family, and everyone struggled with balancing their new American culture with their traditional Indian heritage. Gogol and the story of his Indian name was a major component of the story, where we initially see him embrace his American name Nick until realizing the emotional meaning behind his name Gogol. Through this module, we were able to look into the ideas of culture, nationhood, and identity while also analyzing Asian American representation in film. Benshoff and Griffin emphasize how Asian cultures are generally simplified into one large group. Movies are generally based on the way that white Western cultures think Asian culture is like. In doing this, many different Asian cultures are not being represented and are being stereotyped. Additionally, this movie explores the idea of diaspora, or people being displaced from their homelands and assimilating in a new culture. While parents Ashima and Ashok needed to learn American culture, their children were raised in America and needed to learn to reconnect with their own culture. Eventually, we see how powerful one's culture is when Ashima decides that she wants to move back to India part-time and continue her singing. Module 9 explored a different Asian culture and the idea of culture clash between being native to Asia and being Asian American. The movie Crazy Rich Asians is about an Asian American professor named Rachel who learns that her boyfriend comes from a very wealthy family in Singapore. Upon meeting the family, she experiences a lot of criticism and backlash from the family because she isn't wealthy and she was born in America. This module looks into East Asian traditional values and how this contributes to culture clash. Benshoff and Griffin mention how Asian American actors, though making some big strides in the film industry, are still highly underrepresented or represented in a way that is negative. This film was a major breakthrough, though, as it featured an all-Asian cast with most characters in exclusive executive roles. The film also looks into traditional culture of wealthy Chinese families, in that women often take a second seat to their husbands because that's just what you do. Nick's mother, Eleanor, criticized Rachel for coming from a culture, America, that values individual pursuit of happiness instead of doing what you know is right for your spouse or your family. Module 10 discusses Black women history and indie movies. The movie Fast Color was about a girl named Ruth who, upon being discovered by authorities, reaches out to her mother and daughter for help. She learns about the history of women in her family with her same power and eventually was able to regain her abilities and not hide them from people anymore. This module looks into the representation of African Americans in film and offers a new twist on the superhero genre while looking into female history. Benshoff and Griffin discuss how African American portrayal in film has shifted from seeing them as animals and criminals to seeing them in empowering roles. One common character is the magical Negro, where a Black individual uses their magical powers to ultimately help the distressed white man. This movie is unique in that it features 3 Black women with supernatural abilities, but they aren't superheroes saving mankind. The only thing Ruth's powers were used for that benefited others was making it rain in a town where it hadn't for 8 years. The film also deconstructs the male gaze by not portraying these women sexually. Each of them are dressed in normal clothing. They live in a very rural area, and their superpower is disassembling items into dust and reassembling them. Because their physical appearance wasn't sexualized, their words and actions were more powerful. And lastly, in Module 11, we looked at sexuality, visibility, and queer film. The movie Pariah features a girl named Alike who learns to accept herself as a lesbian but faces a lot of backlash from her parents. In this module, we looked at the representations of the LGBTQ community in film, as well as the queer theory and how it affects one's sexual identity. Benshoff and Griffin mention how homosexuals throughout history were seen as the other because they didn't practice traditional marriage of one man and one woman. We see in this film how Alike is treated like an outcast by her mother, especially for not dressing or acting like a typical female. Additionally, the queer theory explains how people always act in a way that resembles the social norm of what male or female is. This idea is culturally passed down beginning at birth when the color blanket is wrapped around a newborn. This is shown in the film as we see Alike's mother pushing her to act more feminine. She buys her a pink blouse and forces her to wear it to church, then says she shouldn't be hanging out with her lesbian friend because she's a bad influence. This was my overview of modules 7 through 11. Thank you for listening.